Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Governance Live, a series that was started here by the Caribbean Corporate Governance Institute a few years ago, leading up to Governance Week. This year, we held 2 weeks of daily Governance Live, leading up to Governance Week 2024, which was a great success. We have taken the decision to continue with this series because this month, July, is our anniversary month here at CCGI. We turned 12 years old. And so we thought it was a great opportunity to continue the conversation and give our members and friends an opportunity to also meet with some of our directors, get to know them better, and be part of the conversation as we all understand our part and the role we can play in improving corporate governance practices in the region. So just before I bring on my very special guest, I want to share that over the next 2 weeks, we are going to be continuing Governance Live. Next week, in fact, we will be focusing on a new conference that CCGI is hosting. It's the Governance of Small States, inspired by a book written by the president of Armenia, where he points out that being small can be quite an advantage. And so to help discuss and promote that concept, we have our own global ambassador, Professor Bob Garrett, who will be our guest next week, Friday. And following that, turns out to be the actual date of incorporation of CCGI on Friday. And therefore, it will be a very special day as we have our chairman, Nigel Romano, who also happens to be one of our founding directors of CCGI. So it would be an absolutely special moment for us to celebrate our birthday. And so today we come to someone who really has contributed quite immensely to the board over the last few years. I'm happy to welcome and invite Brendan King. Brendan has been a director of CCGI for the last 3 years, recently was re-elected to serve a second term. Brendan King is Canadian, but he has spent a considerable number of years here in the Caribbean region. He has served as chairman of Scotiabank and so was positioned to really be able to help understand and look from an outside perspective how we govern ourselves, what may be some of our differences, and therefore, how can we help make the region better? And so we were very pleased, I could tell you, as CEO of CCGI, I feel so happy at the contribution that Brendan has made on our board so far. So Brendan, welcome to Governance Live. Oh, you unmute, Brendan.
Sorry about that, Kamla. Thank you very much for your kind introduction to serve with you as our CEO on the board for the last 3 years. And it's been great to see the organization continue to grow and develop and make a very important contribution to the really important topic of governance. We know that governance is key to organizations, both public and private sector, to continue to grow and develop. And that's what we all want, to accelerate growth and development throughout the Caribbean so the region reaches its full potential as soon as possible.
Yes, absolutely. And, there's a common saying that normally if you are part of something, you can't see it in the same way as if you get an outside perspective. And therefore, there's tremendous value to having someone like you also play a part in our discussions and how we can grow and improve. So I want to ask you, from the years that you have spent here in the Caribbean region, what may be some of the things that you have observed that you'd like to share with us, both good and potential for improvement?
Sure. It's been my great pleasure to live in the Caribbean for 10 years and live in 3 different states, the Cayman Islands, Trinidad and Tobago, and the Bahamas. So that was one of the pleasures of my life, and had my children born along the way. As some of your viewers may know, a longtime executive with Bank of Nova Scotia, retiring a few years ago after serving 6 years as head of the Caribbean and Central America, along with some countries in South America and Asia. And I was pleased to be chair of the board of Scotiabank in Trinidad and Tobago and the Dominican Republic, and vice chair of the bank's operations in Jamaica. So I think I have a pretty good perspective on the Caribbean, and I have to say it's very close to my heart, and that's why I'm so pleased to continue to contribute, even in a small way, to the development of governance around the region by working with you and the team at the CCGI. Um, you know, to your question around, some of the opportunities and some of the great benefits that we see in the region, um, I think governance has significantly improved over the past 10 years, say. We've seen the regulators in the financial services business and governments continue to work with partners around the world and focus on improving governance. And we're seeing that in boards of directors in both the public and private sector. You're seeing boards strengthen. You're seeing boards take a more proactive role. Still, obviously, respecting the differentiation between management and board, because we have to be very careful to always stay in our lanes. We're not running the company from the board, but we are providing oversight and support to the CEO and management of the company. So I've seen real steps forward in the improvement in governance in the Caribbean, like we've seen it around the world. This is not really a unique to Caribbean issue. As the world becomes more complex, the interoperabilities around the world and how states and institutions are working together, we've seen challenges around the world. So governance is, I think, a key to seeing states and companies around the region continue to develop and do better and serve their constituents, being the people of the nation, the shareholders, the employees, the customers, and all the stakeholders. And we're seeing that improvement along the way. So I've been very pleased to see that, Kamla. It's great to see and great to contribute to it.
Yes, and I want to agree with you that, in fact, there has been a tremendous amount of growth and positive growth with governance practices in terms of awareness in particular.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I can share that persons are very open to hearing from us, to participating with us. As you know, we recently held a governance week with over 50 leaders from the region contributing to, very successful discussions on
Mm-hmm.
regenerative capitalism and how we can make our small states much better. So I agree with you. And it is, in truth, a global thing because we are influenced by a lot of the developments that are taking place around the globe. So
Yeah.
may I then ask, so for me, I have found that the Caribbean region has really bright people.
Mm-hmm.
Innovative, we are creative in many great ways. But our challenges continue. And to my mind, some of it has to do with our culture, with
Mm-hmm.
the fact that we seem to sometimes set mediocrity as our standard. That's the benchmark.
Mm-hmm.
And also, uh, as small states, we have not truly learned to collaborate.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's more competitiveness as to who is in which space. And so those are the areas that I think we need to do some work on. So just
Mm-hmm.
your thoughts on maybe what are some of the cultural differences you may have observed.
I think you raised some interesting points there. And I think there certainly is an aspect in what you're saying. Um, but I'm also seeing, especially over the last maybe 5, 7 years, the emergence of say on the corporate stage, companies that are now looking globally, looking to compete globally, understanding that um, their universe is not just the region anymore, and you see companies expanding into the US. And I look at companies like Grace Kennedy, Jamaica Producers Group, Agostini, Ansa Macau, just to name a few. And we're seeing the steps that they are taking now onto the global stage, not just competing in the Caribbean, where they're very significant and dominant players, but seeing them step into the US, into Europe, making acquisitions, and that exposes them then to the regulatory frameworks in those countries, to the competitive nature of those countries, which can say for the US, Europe, Canada, be very intense with entrenched local players. But you're seeing leading Caribbean companies now stepping onto the global stage, competing and winning in the global marketplace. So that's great to see. And a big reason for that is governance. They understand now, and I'd step into the side a little bit to say one of the challenges is many of these companies are family controlled. And in the past, especially, were reluctant to expose themselves to the public markets, to outside scrutiny, to outside directors having a real voice. But we've seen that change a lot in the last 5 to 7 years. New directors coming on to companies. I've been pleased to serve as a director in many of the Grace Kennedy financial subsidiaries because they welcomed my international perspective and wanted me to challenge them on how they're doing business around the world. So I think we're seeing that more and more. And I think that is a great sign of leading Caribbean companies emerging onto the global stage and winning because of, as you say, the strong, bright people working very, very hard and able to compete globally. One of the challenges is, our states in the Caribbean are small, so it can be challenging to get. We know how hard it is to directors boards because of competitive.
Warren, is it that Brandon's live stream is giving trouble? I am not here. Okay, so I'm not seeing Brandon's.
I'll stop.
I'm not sure if it was my internet that was given some trouble. Brandon, if you're hearing me, I just wanted to get you back on camera. Okay, yeah, so
I am now. Yeah.
Okay.
Are you seeing me?
I'm seeing you now, but we did miss quite
Okay.
a bit of what you
Oh, I'm sorry
yeah,
about that.
your
Maybe I'll turn my video off to reduce the bandwidth. Is that okay, or should I keep it?
yeah, no,
It's a live stream. We should keep it, I guess. Okay.
right.
Well, let's hope for the best. That's one of the challenges of global communication that everybody's aware of. So
Yes.
I was just saying that, and I'm not sure where I left off, but I was just saying that we've seen Caribbean companies compete successfully around the world now. And
Yes.
one of the ways is through improved governance and by bringing directors in from around the world to sit on boards and add a new perspective. One of the challenges for Caribbean companies is, the pool of directors within their market can be small and there can be lots of conflicts. If someone sits on a board, then they can't sit on so many boards. So that continues to be a challenge. But what I love is what the CCGI is doing in terms of governance education at not just the most senior levels, but at, say, the second tier, third tier. So educating potential new directors, especially women and people who maybe not always being seen to be the best candidates, but they are taking up the mantle, and that's widening the pool of future directors. So I can only see more positive growth and more positive improvement in boards going forward as we bring a whole new generation of talent to the awareness of chairmen and shareholders around the region.
Yes, and I love that. You're so right. It has always been the complaint that there was a small pool of persons to choose from.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it doesn't have to be because we
right.
have many people who are very capable. And
That's
what
right.
they need is greater exposure and training in
That's
governance.
right.
So an area though that it would be useful to get your take on is with respect to the financial literacy
Mm,
for board members. Both having served at a bank and so being exposed to SMEs that are applying for
yeah.
financing,
Yeah.
those kinds of things. What would be your thoughts in that area?
Yeah, I think that's a real opportunity that needs to be addressed. There is a lack of financial literacy among board members, among SMEs, the leadership teams. They're bright, hardworking people, have a great idea. How can they win in the marketplace? But they may lack some of the foundational accounting and financial aspects to be able to ensure the business is successful. And I know there's been a lot of work, and CCGI is running courses. I think there's a course coming up soon with Howard
That's
Doughton, who used to
yeah.
be at Scotiabank with me, and he does a great job of helping directors learn the basics so that they can provide that assistance, they can provide that oversight to management, and identify, hey, we're off track. Our gross margin isn't high enough. Our expenses are too high. Our return on capital is not enough, so they can ask those tough questions to help management, help the enterprise go forward. So I think that is a real opportunity. I have seen it improve, but there is a ways to go there. So I'm glad CCGI is taking that on, and I would fully support that going forward.
Yes, agreed. So Howard is doing finance for directors, looking at financial
Right.
stewardship next week, Wednesday. So persons who are listening to this live stream know that they would want to up their ability to analyze financial statements and read them properly. Please
Yep.
reach out to us to register. But
And
I want,
Howard's great too. Very,
oh, yes,
experienced in this. His background is tremendous as a CFO for, Scotia, for Guardian. So, he's a great guy to be able to do this. And his style is very good too. So it's easy for people to track and to learn. So encourage everybody to take part in that.
yes, totally agree. Howard is very engaging because he's extremely passionate, and it
Yes.
that he is an educator.
Yeah,
Howard was a lecturer at the
that's
Lockjack
right.
business as well. So he brings those two skills really well together, the practical experience along with knowing how to be able to train and communicate what can be very challenging for a
Right.
person like numbers.
Yeah.
And also later in September, we have a 3-day workshop, which would be run by Janita John. And Janita is going to look at identifying fraud in the financial statements.
Wow. Good.
So we're
Good.
taking it a little higher because Howard's will teach you the basics and
Yeah.
understanding the income statement, the balance sheet, and the basic
Yeah.
financial statements and how to analyze them. But we want directors to be able to delve deeper. The financials state so much about your business. And
Hmm.
so there's a lot that can be read from it. So identifying red flags.
And fraud is a major issue. As fraudsters become more sophisticated, as AI comes in, as everybody goes digital and goes online and starts operating there, that's opened up a whole new world for fraud. And we've seen that in the financial institutions I've been on the board of. And it is a constant battle, a to and fro. So you've got to be able to recognize it, pick up on it early, and take action. So it's great this course is coming forward. I encourage everybody to take part.
And so, what would be your major thoughts in terms of what directors can do in the Caribbean region? Because you mentioned that we already have a number of organizations that are spreading their wings globally and they're going with confidence because they
Mm-hmm.
have time to study the global regulations and they're making good progress.
Mm-hmm.
We do have a lot more companies that are family owned as well
Mm-hmm.
who can do a whole lot better. When we think of governance practices in the Caribbean region, what would be some of your thoughts as to what we can do? How can we get
Right.
directed to improve generally?
I think it comes down to the shareholders, especially in the family businesses. They have to take the step to understand that they benefit from a strong board, a strong, challenging board. That's to the benefit of the company. It's not a detriment. It can make for some uncomfortable discussions in the boardroom, but that's fine. And leading companies welcome those kind of discussions, welcoming a respectful but challenging board who are engaged, who are providing the oversight that helps the business go forward. We've seen sometimes where families, they kind of stack the board with family members, with friends, with their lawyer. So you don't have an independent factor on the board. Everybody is kind of tied to the family in one way or another. So you become kind of a yes board. The board just goes along with anything the management says. And that doesn't serve the best interest in the long run. An independent board, obviously with family members, but also with truly independent people coming onto the board with a new perspective and who are encouraged to delve deep as appropriate and challenge where necessary, ask the tough questions that will help management identify challenges and opportunities going forward and avoid major problems that could maybe derail the company and so it doesn't reach its potential. So to me, that's the number one opportunity, is for families to recognize the need for independence on the board and to have a good, engaged, and challenging board to help the company move forward.
Thank you, Brendan. I love that. I am so happy that you also pointed out in it that it can mean sometimes having very uncomfortable
Yep.
conversations. And I think that is where we sometimes falter. We are not used to being able to have
Yeah.
disagreements and how to manage that. So it's
Well,
something.
especially, in a small kind of maybe a smaller island or it feels, everybody goes to the same church and they see each other, on the street and it can be challenging. It can be difficult to do, but hopefully, management and the controlling shareholders should take this as a benefit, and take it in the spirit it's being offered, which is constructive. It should always be offered in a constructive and respectful way, but management and the shareholder will benefit by asking the tough questions. And this is especially true, Kamla, around succession. The family member, is that next child, of the founder ready to take over? Or is it just preordained? And we've seen how many companies fail because of succession, because that leadership is not really ready for the task. So to me, that's a key issue of the board, is CEO succession in the first line, that the tough questions are answered. And maybe that son or daughter is not ready yet. They need to bring an outside CEO. And then that's really difficult. That transition from founder to outside CEO, the founder often has difficulty letting go and they can sabotage the new CEO coming in. So it's important that that transition takes place, and having a good, strong board with independence on it to support that transition and to support the new CEO is really critical. So that's an opportunity for the Caribbean as well. And we see it not just in the Caribbean. I see it here in Canada. We've seen family business up here have huge fights. Some of the biggest companies that transition have had that problem, and they fail. So it's a global phenomenon. Maybe a little more prevalent in the Caribbean because of the smaller societies and difficulty to bring external people into these kind of roles. But I really encourage that as one of the key jobs of the board of directors.
All right, as we come close to the end of our half hour, we can't not touch on the whole area of climate change and ESG, particularly because we just experienced Hurricane Beryl pass through the region and the havoc that can be created. So the thing is, we cannot control natural disasters.
No.
But there is an absolute importance among businesses to recognize its impact on the environment that may be contributing.
Right.
So what are your thoughts in terms of how we are dealing with this whole area of ESG and sustainability with governance?
Yeah, I think there's a great deal of progress. One thing I would like to see more of, because even in Canada, Canada produces 1.5% of global emissions. So if Canada stops all emissions, it will have almost no impact on the global state and the amount of climate change that takes place. Even more so in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
What needs to be done, from my perspective, and we see this from the Prime Minister of Barbados, for example, is to continue to champion the need for the big emitters, China, Russia, United States, Brazil, etc. Champion global initiatives through the UN and other global forums to recognize the impact this has on small states, especially in the Caribbean, which are very susceptible to climate change and the impact that it has. The other thing, I think, and we're seeing this now as well in Barbados and other states, in Jamaica as well, is climate adaptability. Given that you can't change that, that our states can't change the impact on climate, we have to ensure that we're prepared for the changes that are coming, to make our economies more resilient, to have the financial resources at the ready to ensure recovery takes place. And then when recovery takes place, to make sure that new buildings and roads are hardened, are built at the highest standard to resist the inevitability of yet the next storm that's coming. And don't just rebuild the same way or in the same place. Maybe you've got to go further back. Maybe you've got to build more barriers to protect your state, to protect your shorelines. So I think, two prongs. One is to champion through international forums, to get the global emitters, the real guys who are making the problems, to help them change. And second, put the resources in place and the plans in place to make sure your economy and your physical infrastructure is resilient and can withstand the next impact. And we saw in Jamaica, there was a lot of damage in the south, but it could have been much worse had, the roads hadn't been made better from the last hurricane. So we're seeing improvements along those ways, and we need to see more done in that area.
I think that was great advice, Brandon. And it was such a pleasure talking to you here for Governance Life. It helps for us to always be able to delve deeper and see, celebrate the things that are good, but also recognize there's some room for us to improve. And I truly like how you have ended it. That there are some things as small states we will not have control over. But the
Right.
thing we do, which helps build resilience, to quote your words, and to help ensure that the quality of life that people have is the best that we can do given our resources. I think,
Wonderfully said.
yes, great way for us to end this live today. Thank you so much. Just to share with our participants who are listening as well, CCGI is participating in PMI SCC's 25th anniversary this coming Saturday. We are going to be part of the cookout competition at La Vega. So anyone who is listening, we do have persons who are members of both PMI SCC and CCGI. We welcome you to come and join us at La Vega and participate in a day of fun, because we do work very hard here. We get a lot of things done.
Yes, that's for sure, especially you.
Yes, take time to celebrate.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so and I bring Governance Live to an end today. A reminder, next week, Friday, we have Professor Bob Garrett as we talk about governance of small states. We're going to focus on two particular areas. We're going to talk about the impact of technology. We'd be looking at AI and blockchain. And we would also be looking, of course, at sustainability and climate. How are we progressing with ESG, and how can small states form an alliance that we can work together and share our resources? This is an initiative that initially came through a discussion I had with Charlotte Vallet, former chair of the IOD of the UK, who will be leading the conversation for our one-day conference. And that's going to be on July 25th. Thank you all so much, Brandon. Have a great day.
Thank you, Kamla. I appreciate the opportunity, and all the best.
Yes. All right.
Take
Thank
care.
you, Brandon. Bye-bye.
Bye.